Okay, so you think Bug, our dog, should be my podcast guest this week?
Yes, I do. I think she has a lot to say.
Bug, what do you have to share with us on the topic of productivity or time management or being purposeful and intentional with our time? Oh, yeah? And what else? Oh, my goodness. Welcome to Task Time Energy, the purpose-filled productivity podcast. I'm your host, Scott Miller, and before we go any further, I want to let you all know that we are not going to spend another 30 minutes with me asking my dog questions and my dog barking back at me in response. You know, that's kind of funny for around 15 or 20 seconds maybe, but I think we already rode that wave all the way into shore. What I would like to talk about, what I would like to share, are some thoughts about the dark side of productivity. Okay, so maybe this is not going to be as ominous or as sinister as that sounds, although this is the 13th episode of our podcast. And on that note, I want to say thank you to everyone who's been listening. If you've been listening to every episode, if you've listened to every episode so far, I hope you have found them interesting or informative or enjoyable or all of those things. If this is your first time listening, then thanks for joining us. And, you know, to be totally honest, even if you have a dog like one of our dogs who's afraid of thunderstorms and you've been leaving the podcast on in the background as background noise to drown out the sound of the thunder for your dog, I'm very happy that we're able to be of service to you and your dog. I mean that. Sincerely, I'm very, very grateful to everyone who's been listening. So what do we mean by this dark side of productivity? What's that all about? When we talk about productivity in the first place, we're talking about producing something. If you're being productive at work, being productive at your job, that means you're producing whatever work that you're expected to produce, right? If you run your own business then and you have a very productive day, that might mean that you are producing things or completing tasks that are going to help your business succeed. And these things are great. It can be very satisfying to complete a bunch of tasks that you want to complete. It can be very satisfying and amazing to choose an outcome that you want to achieve in your life and to work really hard to achieve that. As an executive coach, as a leadership coach, these are the kind of things that I help people with. You know, even in other jobs that I've done in the past, I've helped people accomplish some really amazing goals. And for some people, the feeling that they're not being productive can be really inspiring, be really motivating. For some people, when they feel they're not being productive enough, that motivates them to get up off the couch and do something that will make them satisfied, that will make them happy. But this dark side of productivity shows up when people aren't being as productive as they want to be, and they start feeling very stressed about that. It comes up when people start connecting their productivity to their value as a human being. That might sound kind of weird, but this is something that a lot of us do. Sometimes we're aware that we're doing it, and sometimes, we're not so aware that we're doing this. It's certainly something that I've experienced. Maybe it's something that you've experienced too. You have this task list, this list of tasks that you want to complete today, and you're not getting them all done. And you start getting really stressed about it. Maybe you have these outcomes that you want to achieve in your life, and you don't feel like you're making progress towards those, and it starts to really bother you. We connect our value as a human being with the amount of progress that we're making towards are the things we want to accomplish, or the amount of progress we're making towards maybe living up to other people's expectations, or what we think other people expect of us. And these are all things that can cause people a lot of stress and cause people to question themselves on a really fundamental level. And maybe sometimes we're aware when we're doing this, sometimes we're not. But I think it's important to really think about this and examine it and be aware of it. And it's important to realize that you don't have to prove your value as a human being. You don't have to justify your existence. This is the problem, is that we start to feel like we have to prove our value as a human, as a person, or justify our existence by being productive. And again, if everyone's different, so if you actually find that thinking that way is very motivating and inspiring for you, that's great. That's fantastic. If that genuinely works for you, then it's not a problem. But this is a problem for a lot of people. And the most important thing to recognize is that you have value as a human being just as you are right now. Whether or not you're accomplishing everything on your to-do list, whether or not you feel like you're making progress towards the things that you want to accomplish in your life, whether or not you feel like you're living up to other people's expectations, you have value. You have value as a human being. Your life has value just as it is right now. And there are a number of different ways we can look at this, right? We can look at it from like a philosophical or a spiritual context. We can also look at this just from a very practical standpoint, a very practical and pragmatic standpoint. There are a lot of different reasons why we might not be moving towards our goals as quickly as we want to. We might not feel like we're achieving all the things in life that we want to achieve or achieving them as quickly as we want to. And when we allow that to negatively impact the way we value ourselves as human beings, that can be very demotivating for people and lead to a lot of stress, which in turn undermines our productivity. That stress undermines our productivity. That stress undermines our creativity. Believing that we have to be productive in order to prove that we have value as a person, in order to justify our existence, is actually getting it backwards. It's completely backwards. If you really genuinely value yourself as a person, value yourself as a human being, if you recognize and acknowledge that your life has value just as it is, you have value as a person just as you are, and you really deeply feel and believe in your value as a person, that can be very motivating. And that can inspire us to be more productive. It can inspire us to steadily work towards those outcomes that we want to achieve and ride through those waves in life, the days when we're less productive. If I base my value as a person on how productive I'm being, it really is getting things very backwards in a fundamental and practical way. If you believe in your value as a person, if you believe in your value as a human being, if you recognize that your life has value, that you have value just as you are right now, if you really deeply and profoundly believe that, think about how that would impact your life. What would become possible for you if you truly felt that way, if you truly thought that way? It's important to remind ourselves of this from time to time, too, because we're constantly being bombarded by these messages that would lead us to believe that we need to be productive in order for our lives to have any value. We have to justify our existence through what we accomplish in life. We might not even really be aware of that message, but it comes across in so many ways. People don't often ask, are you happy? Do you recognize the value that your life has? Do you recognize the value that you have as a person, just as you are right now? That's not a message that's getting broadcast to us day in and day out. What would life be like if it was? So again, if you're the kind of person who gets a little uneasy when you're not being productive, and that motivates you and inspires you to, get up off your butt and do something, and that makes you happy, then that's great. I'm happy for you. I really am. I know people like that, and they wouldn't want to live any other way. But if you're listening to this and you're recognizing that you have been or you're in the habit of connecting your value as a person to how productive you are being, and you feel that your value as a person relies on being productive in some way, accomplishing things, doing things, then maybe a very valuable message to hear is you don't have to justify your existence. You have value just the way you are. Your life has value just the way it is. And even if you're not feeling too sure about that, even if you're not sure that you entirely believe that, then again, from a very practical point of view, take a moment and think about what it would be like if you did fully embrace that thought and that belief. What would become possible for you? What would your life be like? What would you be able to accomplish? What would you be able to be? I just wanted to share these few thoughts with you today. And I also want to let you know that I'm going to be taking some time off. We started this podcast earlier this year, and my goal was to put out an episode every 2 weeks, every Thursday. And we've done that. We've done that ever since the first episode. We've been putting one out every 2 weeks. We met that goal. And I'm pretty excited about that. So now I want to take a couple weeks off and just focus on some other things. We'll be back with another episode on August 11th, Thursday, August 11th. And we look forward to you joining us then. In the meantime, if you want to talk about taking a healthy approach to productivity, if you're interested in keeping a healthy and useful perspective on being productive, then visit my website, scottmillercoaching.com, or send me an email, scott@scottmillercoaching.com. The spooky music that you heard in this episode is by Mems on Pixabay. The funky theme music that we play at the beginning of these episodes and sometimes at the end is by Energetic Music. I'm Scott Miller. This episode also featured commentary by my wife, Lauren, and by Bug the Cuddle Puppy. So have a great couple weeks. We'll be back on August 11th and look forward to having you join us again then. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening.